make a short critical analysis of the documentary Crip Camp. This was made using all recordings of a camp for disabled Camp Janet made in the 70s and interviews with some of its participants. A documentary that leaves us many questions. What if we were all born with the same disability? What is it that establishes what normal is and what normal is not? Is the construction of our societies designed for everyone?
Crip Camp is a documentary that tells you about the struggle that people with disabilities carried out for their rights in the 70s in the United States. But how did they all meet? A summer camp. Camp Janet for disabled teens is the trigger that prompts several of the participants to join the radical movement that advocates for the rights of people with disabilities, a camp organized by hippies, a place where everyone with their various disabilities feel in some way more normal. From that place, love and union will emerge for future struggles.
Judy Human, a participant in Camp Janet, would assume the leadership of Disabled in Action and would invite her old colleagues to join this movement. They were live planned outside of the Capitol, paralyzing New York roads, mostly in wheelchairs. More than 100 disabled people occupied the local office of the Department of Health, Welfare and Education for 25 days, demanding the Carter's government to give up compliance with their rights. Even so, they resisted this disappointment on the part of the politicians on duty at the time. There are very representative moments in this documentary. One of them is when they relative their experience in the camp. It leaves us with a feeling that normality is only relative.
Or when the Black Panthers and other organizations bring input to disabled people who were staying at the local office of the Department of Health, Welfare and Education. It shows that the struggle of a minority is the struggle of all minorities, and that in the difficulty also arises empathy between those excluded from society. Like one Afro-American camper of Camp Janet said, Lionel G. Gouillard is the name.
There were obstacles that were in my way, being a black man. The same thing was held true for individuals in wheelchairs.
The sacrifices are necessary to the rights fight. Those rights that we enjoy wasn't given thanks to the real politicians were. The societies aren't built based on diversity of everyone who are part. Instead, these are product of homogenization, excluding those wasn't normal.
The main thing is not that our rights are written on paper. The best way to defend and claim them is by exercising them. Finally, it should be noted that what makes Crip Camp more exciting is seeing how so many years later the people who were in the camp in the 70s reflect a feeling of happiness and satisfaction for what they achieved with their struggle for their rights. Okay, for lovers of the history of revolution, the documentary Crip Camp is a very good choice, which goes beyond the struggle for the civil rights of the people with disabilities.
The miniseries miniseries, Inhuman Resources is a story that frames the ruthless human misery under an alienating labor system, which is rejected by the protagonist, how reaches the limit of what he could be.
The miniseries is based on the book Inhuman Resources by Frenchman Pierre Lamantre. It is the below with a third-person narrative with a lot of emotionality, intensity, and with many psychological analysis of the character director towards himself. Our main character, Alain Delambre, takes us from the moment he finds himself in a cell with a broad appearance and attitude of that person has been purged of all fear, to the begin when, after 6 years of precarious work, he receives one day accept the boss humiliation by killing him.
6 years after being fired from human resource position, after 25 years working in a company. But the story is not linear. It jumps in the time to a moment when he is found ahead of the story. He tells himself that that's totally alienated, being him in search of getting that job. How terrible has life become?
It is especially visceral in its narrative. It recognizes human needs as part of the composition of emotions, that desires beyond being directed at someone are aimed at satisfying themselves. A man pushed by his own limits, on the edge of growth and a woman that each day looks more worried about him. It makes us question about who we describe us. Like us, being who fight to survive both aren't human garbage, because this narrative, this protagonist carries us to that kind of reflections. This narrative we call name like the promised tragedy, because something really tough must have happened if this guy changed so much, making that the element of relief himself from an unknown future. We don't have any idea about how far this future must be. It's an excellent hope for the reader or spectator that make us want know more deep this story, know how he got there, a very commonly used element today.
Series in terms of the way it develops. It focuses a lot on the plot and the narrative, although it has dramatic twists. It does not focus so much on being attractive all the time or striking. It links and confronts two worlds in a very interesting way, and is that of businessmen who make decisions all the time, even knowing the social repercussion of this or without knowing them, and thus who suffer this repercussion. Recommended for those who like to see the confrontation between distant realities and the rawness that is also in human emotions, and not so recommended for those who like a simple plot and with superficial discursive elements of very fast essence.